All right, I wanted to come back and talk about For Against Darkness, specifically giving you a little recap of my attempt to play the game not using 4 characters, but using 2 characters. I decided against doing a total solo mission because I was attempting the necromantic dungeons from Digressions of the Devouring Dead, which are themselves extremely challenging, and we'll get a look inside and see whether it was the dungeon or the fact that I only had 2 characters that did me in. And it was a short run. Actually I didn't completely have a total party kill, but I'm stopping playing now because I wanted to do the discussion of the video and then go back and sort of figure out a better plan for attempting these rules. So before I get to the discussion of what actually happened here, I will review the rules for playing For Against Darkness with 1 or 2 characters, really, or 3, I suppose, but the point is playing with fewer than 4 characters. These rules come from Tales from the Adventurers Guild, and we will take a look at them here first and then show you how I decided to implement them. So, the rules themselves say that, to clarify, that this is a system playing where every player assumes the role of 1 character. So it does allow for true solo gaming with a core book. It also helps you, I suppose, if you're playing with multiple people, each controlling 1 character and you're playing with 2 people or whatever. As it says, it does not alter any of the rules. It's going to tweak the levels of the major dangers, the bosses and the weird monsters, as well as saves, and the number of minion monsters. That would be minions or vermin encountered. And it explains how it does that. And basically, there is a chart here that will show you what is up. So it's giving you rules to play with 1, 2, or 3 characters of levels 1, 2, 3, or 4, and the various modifications that will ensue. What these modifications have to do with concern the number of major monsters and dangers. So you are potentially subtracting 1 level from the level of the weird monsters, bosses, and saves to a minimum of 2. Or you're subtracting for the number of minor monsters. There could be various modifications that you're rolling them up using a D3 instead of a D6, and then you're subtracting 1 or 2 from that. That's a possibility. Other possibility is you could have a night vision benefit, which is essentially that you don't need to carry a lantern with you, and it tells you you can assume the dungeon is well lit, or if you're outside, you can assume that things are taking place during the day or that there's a magical source of light. But it says if you don't see the night vision notation, you will need a lantern. And then there are some trinkets that you can potentially get, and we'll look at those in a second. So following this chart, for example, in my case, I was playing 2 characters at level 2. So what that meant was I could use night vision, although you'll see on my character sheet, I didn't realize that actively, and I was carrying a lantern, but I didn't need to carry a lantern. For the major dangers, it would be -1 level. So any weird monster or boss I encountered, I would just lower the level 1. When I was rolling for minions and vermin, I would roll a D3 instead of a D6. And as you'll see in our discussion, unfortunately, with these, and there was one case where there was 2D6, so I rolled 2 D3s, I kept rolling high. So I actually ended up with fairly high numbers of minion and vermin, but it was a D3 instead of a D6. And then I was allowed 1 trinket from the trinket group. Now, I did intentionally give myself a benefit there, and I took more than 1 trinket, but in the end, as you'll see, it didn't matter. Some of these trinkets are that you could get a scroll that would contain one of the basic For Against Darkness spells. You could get a potion of healing. You could get a power cookie, which would allow a gnome, halfling, goblin, or luton to fight as a warrior for 3 rooms or areas, and only 1 cookie per character can be eaten per game, and it's a one-time use food magic item. You could get or choose an enhanced sling bullet, which would add a +2 to a single sling attack roll. A mist sphere, which could be thrown to the ground as a free action, giving a +3 to all defense rolls when you withdraw from combat. I had that. I chose not to use it. That might have been a mistake. You could get a darkness sphere, and that can be dropped and give a +3 to a single stealth roll. And you can apply this bonus to a roll performed by an individual, although it does not work against monsters that have the word dark in their name. There's Candy of Hyperactivity, and you can perform 2 melee attacks per turn for 3 turns once you eat it. And then you, if the combat is continuing, you're going to lose some life for that. Or an Enchanted Bauble, and it's a small amulet, and it will give a +2 to single save of your choice, and it burns up when it's used, even if the save is unsuccessful. So when it refers to trinkets, you can choose from among that list, and you can see, for example, if you were truly playing with 1 character at level 1, and I think I'm going to try this next, you would have 3 trinkets that you could get. You wouldn't have to carry a lantern. You would be subtracting 1 level off of the major dangers and -2 of minor monsters, rolling a d3. It's kind of written a little strangely, but I think what that means is you'd be rolling a d3 for the minor monsters -2, but there is a minimum number that you would encounter anyway, and that minimum number is 1. So you would find yourself probably encountering a lot of just 1 minions. So those are the rules. Now, when testing these out, I chose to go with 2 level 2 characters because one of the things that I think is a strength of the game is the fact that the characters can be interacting with each other, and making a party where you have characters that interact with each other, I think, is part of the enjoyment of the game. And indeed, in this book, and I pointed this out a little bit in the prior video I did about this book, is that it does go into some discussion of choosing your party carefully, specifically for these very difficult dungeons that have locked doors and trap doors throughout, for example. And it talks about bringing with you a trap specialist and some type of supporting class and a tinkerer, and then, of course, a big gun, essentially, fighter. So you obviously will lose that when you're running just 1 character. So my plan in choosing to run 2 characters and in testing this out was I wanted to do 2 things with it. One, I wanted to use, because I was going into this dungeon and using this book, I wanted to stick mostly to this book, aside from the rules for it, which came from here, was I wanted to use some of the new classes that are in this book, and I ended up choosing a necromancer and a sentient golem. I was toying with the idea of going with a mutant because that obviously allows for, more variability really in what you're doing. But I was trying to get essentially some magic in here. So the necromancers are essentially evil-ish wizards, although it says if you are playing as one, it's presumed that your character at least pretends to be among the more respectable sort of necromancer. And so with my necromancer at level 2, per the rules, this is Varlant the necromancer, he had 5 spells, and they were chosen from among the chaos and necromantic spells for available. So I had a revelation spell that would allow me to speak with a corpse and get some clues. I thought that was important to try to help out with whatever mission we were going to do. The Chains of Misery I use, which is you make a spellcasting roll against the monster's level. On a success, the monster intestines burst out and entangle them and gives the party +2 to all attacks. And so my idea was to do that and then kind of let the sentient chaos golem go to town with his huge war club that already had the +1 attack. And that was going to be my offensive plan. The other plan B was this Children of the Damned, which would allow me to reanimate a non-undead corpse and fight our next encounter with us to try to get another body there to help. I could wound myself to heal my party member, and I did that once. And the Chaos Missile doesn't need a roll, but it causes 1 wound to myself and then 2 wounds to all bosses and weird monsters in the room. I never got a chance to actually use that. We also were carrying with the Necromancer this something I also didn't use. I had 3 Oozebane, which was a powder that could have been thrown against ooze, sludge, mold, slime, mushrooms, fungus, etc., to automatically inflict a couple of wounds. So I never really got that far to use that. But that was my idea, to have this spellcaster essentially lay out a beneficial scenario for my sentient chaos golem to come in and to attack with his crushing huge war club. He was carrying some lockpicks that we got along the way, and he has, as a construct, basically a lot of immunities to poison and famine and such. And I thought that this would be useful because he had a lot of life to start. I think he started with 9 life and would basically be like a fighting machine. So that was my concept. It might have worked, but the dungeons here, as mentioned, are extremely lethal. And everything started out nicely at the outset because we encountered some Doompires, and we had 4 of them. So again, my rolling on the D3 ended up not super helping me because I kept rolling 3s, basically. But the level was lower, so we encountered 4 level 4 Doompires, and when I rolled for the reaction, it ended up being a magic challenge that we won. So that's where we were immediately. The benefit of winning that was an option to get some trinkets, and I was able to pick up 4 trinkets from the rules, these solo rules here. So that was immediately helpful at the outset. But and so I got a potion of healing, which again I couldn't use on the construct. I could use on myself. I had this mist sphere that one of these I had already taken, which gave the defense, and then this darkness sphere. So it started out nicely, as these games sort of do, but it went south quickly because what happened to me was I got caught up in we found some fetal wraiths, but they didn't have any treasure for us. That wasn't so bad. But then there was a trap, and there was a maze of traps, in fact, here, because every door has the potential in this dungeon of being a 3 in 6 chance of being trapped. And then you need to roll on the traps table if it is trapped. And in this case, that was just pretty lethal. So when we rolled on the traps table, in this case, we got a maze of traps. And what it asked us to do was to roll once on the basic traps table in 4 Against Darkness for every 5 squares in the room, rounding down. And in this case, it was a 10-square room. So we had to roll twice, and this was the room here. So we rolled twice, and we got a dart trap and a spear trap. Again, not so super bad, but the one was level 2, one was level 5. However, in the rules here, the traps are complex. And complexity points work as if there were life points to the trap. So essentially you're fighting against the trap and then the trap is fighting back. And if you can't disarm it, for each defensive roll, it keeps attacking you. If you do disarm it, you lower its level. So I had no trouble with the level 2 trap, but when it came to the level 5 trap, I had a lot of trouble. And I don't know if I was 100% doing the rules correctly, but we ended up losing. Our golem just attempted to disarm it repeatedly and ended up going down a lot in health. And then once that happened and we were in the room, it wasn't so bad. We had these vampire scions. We got rid of those pretty quickly, but then trying to get out of the room, it was also trapped. And then there was a cave-in. And so the cave-in trap, I will show you. It's, again, they tell you it's brutal, and it is. So the cave-in trap caused the roof to collapse in that location. If there was a character ahead of the group, they could attempt to disarm it. I didn't have anybody ahead, so I needed to clear some rubble. Now, it said clearing 1 square of rubble takes 10 minutes, requiring a wandering monsters check. I wasn't sure how many squares I needed to clear because I wasn't specifically like standing here. I was standing here, so I guess I said I needed to clear 1 square of rubble. That, honestly, I wasn't completely sure about how to handle that, given that there's potentially 10 squares in the room. I suppose I could have rolled the D10 to say, oh, well, I only actually needed to roll 1, or I needed to clear them all. I don't know. That rule was lost to me, but in any case, I chose the beneficial thing and said I needed to just clear it once. But then when I rolled for Wandering Monster, we did get something, and at that point, I stopped because I think I am down to, I lost my Necromancer, as I said, trying to deal with the other trap. I'm down to low health here. I think I was at 1 health and no way really to heal myself. So let's see, wrong character, 2 health and no way to really heal myself because I lost him. Now, the funny thing was I did pick up a soul cube when I rolled on with some treasure table. I picked up a soul cube, which would restore all my life, but I guess I decided that I wasn't really feeling it. That wasn't really feeling the way this was turning out, and it felt more like a struggle than an enjoyable experience. So the message here that playing with the solar rules doesn't work? No, that's definitely not my message. I think my message is, first of all, perhaps playing with those rules here, starting here for the first time, even at level 2, might not be the best idea. So that's one message. The other message is, I think that for especially becoming attached to one character, for me at any rate, I want to start that character at level 1. I want to be involved in that character's development and evolution. I think choosing who that character is, I think is just going to be really tough because obviously you're paring away a lot of what they can do when you make that choice. Now, I haven't investigated the patron rules and the other guild rules and what those benefits possibly could confer. So that there may be a way with those rules to kind of game the system in a way, or game the game, to play as one character, but also give some other benefits and maybe have a hireling or something. Because while I do gravitate toward the concept of one character or maybe 2, I do like that idea and want to investigate that further. I think it could get very limiting if you just didn't have a character that was as robust as the rules provide for, with all the different options, with all the many characters and classes that exist at this point. So my next step here on my journey to One Against Darkness is I'm going to think about the material that I have, try to get one character going from level 1 and see what types of rules I can modify to give them a little bit of a benefit, maybe give them some type of hireling that will offer a transitory benefit, and not go back to this devouring dead dungeon right yet. Start with something easier, probably maybe even start with something, one of the outside spaces, the wilderness spaces that just feel a little more open, and give myself more of that sense of exploration and development with one character. And perhaps, as I said, create some rules where I will eventually get with that character the benefit of some other type of, maybe a familiar, maybe a hireling, or something that will give a little variance in the way I can approach the enemies that I'm going to be encountering in the game. So overall, I'm happy to have these rules, and I think for me, I need to do further exploration as to how to make them work, but that is my next task in my 4 Against Darkness play style. And as a little benefit to those of you who watch this entire video, sneaking into the picture here, you can see something that will give you a clue as to something else I'm working on for the channel, which is the log sheet for D100 Space. And you can expect to see that coming into play later on the channel. So as always, thank you for watching, and thank you for the support that you've offered for these little foray into 4 Against Darkness, and kind of reviving this game into my rotation.